Hello everyone, welcome back to Sunday Night Live. I hope you had a good weekend. Tonight my guest is a legend. My guest is Stephen Jones, who is a British millionaire. He just won the British Accessories Designer Award. He also has an exhibition on view at Palais Galliera in Paris. Is fantastic, and I'm very honored to have Stephen as a guest tonight. Welcome everyone. I think Stephen is here. Feel free to ask your questions for him in comments and we'll try to answer them. Bonjour Elodie. Hi everyone. Hello, hello, hello. Hi Stephen, welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
Very good. Just came back from Paris this morning.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. I was there. I've been there all week because we've been working on the next collection for Dior, and I was
Mm-hmm.
giving different tours of the exhibition. So, and we had our staff Christmas party. I brought all my staff over from England to France, and we had a look around the Palais Galliera on Friday morning, and we had lunch.
Oh, so nice.
Uh,
So
then we
with
went
your
to the
staff,
Galerie Dior as
oh,
well.
I haven't seen the exhibition at Galerie Dior yet, the
Yeah.
Lindbergh exhibition, right?
Yeah, because it changes every 6 months. The whole
Mm.
thing, every single dress changes too.
Yes, I know. I know they can't keep it for more than 6 months, I think,
Yeah,
because then
yeah,
the dress has to sleep for 3 years.
yes, exactly.
Is it the same for your hats? Do they need to rest
Well, they've been
after being?
resting quite a long time, most of them, so they're quite happy to be awake.
Actually, I have to say, I just went to see the exhibition. I've been meaning to visit it for ever since it opened in October,
Mhm.
and I went today, and it was fantastic. I'm so,
Okay, great.
and it was crowded. Wow,
Yeah,
still
yeah.
crowded.
They're very, very happy, but also that's the power of the hat that you don't have to be a fashion insider, you don't have to be a fashionista, you don't just have to be interested in appearance. That's all.
Mm,
And everybody can get something from it. That's the
mm.
power of a hat. Not only my hats, by the way.
Actually, my takeaway from the exhibition was that fashion was more fun before. I felt nostalgic from a time I didn't know, but the time, I mean, your beginnings, it seemed so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. And I still, in the world of Stephen Jones, it still is fun, actually. It's just the rest of fashion sometimes, which is less fun. But, the reason that fashion makes sense, it corresponds to the times and what people want to wear. You
Mm,
know, the reason that the New Look was so successful in the 40s was people were really desperate for
mm,
that.
mm,
It's actually not what the designer does, it's what the public wants to have. That's what makes it a success. So I think people just want sort of slightly calmer clothes now.
mm.
But I don't know, there's still space
For
to
fun.
have fun with clothing. Absolutely,
Mm,
yeah.
mm,
But what we saw, I mean, when I was growing up, was clothes very much as an individual self-expression. I mean, it now is more belonging to a club. So you belong to, you could say you could belong to a Dior club, or you belong to Paris Saint-Germain club, or you could belong to we'll get shot for this, the Catholic Church club. But it's a way of associating with something through your clothing. But I
mm.
think for us it was different. We wanted, maybe there wasn't anything which existed for us which we thought was appropriate. So we had to invent our own
Mm,
thing.
so it was more individual and now it's more a group. It's more to
Yeah,
show you belong to
yeah,
a group.
yeah, yeah. And maybe we were individuals within a group as well.
Right.
But the final result was quite different.
Mm,
Was
mm. Yeah, the Blitz, the nightclub. So I understand it was a little bit the equivalent of Studio 54, but in London,
We
right?
wished. That glamorous. But yes, it was in a funny way. It was
Mm.
the place that everybody went to see and be seen and to express themselves. And certainly, I mean, at that time, we all knew about Studio 54, this myth of Studio 54 and glamour, but that was a little bit before
Oh,
us. And
I see.
we wanted to make something new, you know.
Mm.
We
So it
didn't want to
was
make
more.
Studio 54. We wanted to make something which was maybe British,
Mhm.
uh, something which was probably not disco, even though within the exhibition I do have a disco ball.
Yes, and you have really good music. I had Shazam open because I wanted to see which song it was each time.
But you know, there's a QR code on the wall there that you can go up and photograph it, and yeah,
Oh, I
yeah,
missed that.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But actually, if you search on Apple Music or Spotify, and there's a few other different ones as well. If you look for Stephen Jones Chapeau d'Artiste, it will come up with the playlist, and it's about
Okay.
an hour and three quarter of different tracks.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think you said, or I read that at the time you said it was as important the way you dressed that what you were creating when you were at Central St. Martin's. You were a student at this very renowned school, and the way you dressed was, yeah, equally important. Is that right?
Yes, because we went dressing as a fashion. We were dressing as a way of life. We were dressing as what we believed in,
Mm.
which was represented in clothing. This is very, very different. So, you know, if you were, I mean, also it's very damning as well, because if you were wearing beige cashmere, maybe you thought like beige cashmere. I don't know.
What's
It's
wrong
something.
with beige
I'm wearing
cashmere?
beige cashmere at the moment. Oh my God. Take me out and make me into
I was
dog meat.
almost going to wear my beige cashmere sweater, but
But you didn't.
um,
You wore your
no.
pale blue shirt, so
Yeah.
fine. I'll let you off.
Yes, I read that you had to choose at the school between the beige cashmere and the punk, and you went with a punk club.
Yes, because well, basically on my first day at St. Martin's, I went into this big room, which is where everybody was assembled, and there were all these girls wearing beige cashmere on one side of the room, and a bit of leopard skin as well. I mean, I have to give them that. And there were most of them there, and on the other side, there were the about five or six girls, because there was only one other man on the course, and he was a mature student because he was 25 and had been engineer for British Rail. And anyway, these girls on the right hand side, they were all wearing black and they were punks. And there was one girl there, and it was the most extraordinary thing. She was wearing a black man's suit. I'd never seen that before.
Mm.
And she had in the buttonhole in her lapel a tampon hanging out of it, which she coloured the end in red and magic marker. And I just thought that was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And I just thought, I've got to hang with her. And she
So you
was
stick.
Shan from a band called the Nipple Erectors.
Mm.
We're still friends today, amazingly enough.
Wow. And someone commented and said that you have a beige hat as well.
Well, yes,
So
because I'm wearing a red jacket, so I could wear a red hat, but I thought it was a bit much, so I thought beige would be quite good
it's
with
still very Christmassy indeed.
red tartan jacket.
That's very nice.
Mm. By a designer called Stephen Leonard, who sadly passed away this year.
Mm. You wear a hat every single day.
Yeah,
You do, right?
yeah, yeah.
And how do you describe your style?
Oh God, I don't know. I think I look resolutely normal, but I do have this unique ability of wearing a beige beret and you know, turning it into a fashion item. I mean, I don't know why that is. How do I describe my style? Quite classic, I think. I mean, I wear sort of very normal clothes, but I don't know. I am what I am. Mhm.
At what point do you, at what point in the design process? Because you collaborate with many designers,
I
and
have collaborated with many designers in my
mhm,
career, but I actually, at any one time, and this is quite an important thing, at any one time, I do not collaborate with very many.
mm,
Yeah.
because the longest collaboration is the collaboration with Dior that you mentioned
Actually,
in
the longest
the.
collaboration is with John Galliano.
Yes.
Um, John Galliano is the longest, Dior the second, and the third is Claude Montana. I worked
Mm,
with Claude Montana for 16 years, I think it was.
mm. And you told Loïc Prigence that then Thierry Mugler didn't talk to you for years because you worked with Claude Montana.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it was very sad and such a waste of time, but that's how he was. But he was a genius too. So I respect that, you know?
Hmm. And we see both of them in the exhibition at Palais
Yeah.
Galliera, actually.
Yeah. There's one Mugler outfit and one Montana outfit and one Montana for Lanvin outfit.
Yes, he made couture for Lanvin.
He made
It's a.
couture for Lanvin, and people have said, oh, it wasn't successful or whatever. The actual reason was the owners of Lanvin, which were Beecham Pharmaceuticals at the time, because they bought it for the perfume.
Mhm,
Um, he he said they wanted him to do the pret-a-porter because he was only doing couture, and he said no designer can design two collections in parallel at the same time. And in a way, he was right. I mean, Tom Ford found it very difficult when he was at Saint Laurent and Gucci. John, obviously, designing Galliano and Dior. You can, in a way, that's why I say I don't work with that many designers, because you can only give your heart to one. Mm.
mm. And we have a comment. I remember John Galliano asked you to make hats for him, I think at St. Martin's, and you said, I don't think so, darling. Is that true?
But I'm not sure, and I actually can't remember it, but Colin McDowell, the great journalist, says that in his book. Anyway, it's become an urban myth, and fine, I'll go with that.
Okay.
But John and I were very social. We knew each other socially, and Sibyl de Saint-Phal, who is my first assistant, really became his first assistant, PR person.
Mm,
Um, so yeah, we knew each other very well. And he had asked me to make hats, but not at that time. And I don't think that was my report. But there's actually the first person to make hats for him was somebody called Bauke de
mhm,
Vries and
mhm,
Shirley Hex, who was my teacher and was Philip Tracy's teacher. And she made hats for him too, very early on. And in
mm. And
fact,
Val.
the Galliano outfits, which the V&A have, the very early ones, which is a wedding dress and three bridesmaids' dresses, the hats are made by Shirley Hex.
I see.
Mm.
You have such a wide production because we saw each other at the in Riyadh very recently at the Designer of Dreams exhibition of Dior, and
Yeah.
there are a number of your creations on show at this exhibition. And at
Hmm.
Palais Galliera, there are 170 hats on
Yeah.
display. How
Yes.
many how many hats do you have worldwide
Well, there's
right
actually about
now?
150 in Riyadh as well at the moment.
Wow.
And there's
Okay.
about, in the Dior Gallery in Paris, there's about
Yes, that too.
130 or something. So I'm very overexposed. Ooh.
Yes, you're everywhere. You received the designer, accessories designer of the year.
Yes.
Congratulations, just
Thank
this
you. Thank
week.
you. Yeah, it was a huge surprise. I really had no idea. Everybody thinks that I would know in advance, but I did not. So I was there throughout the meal. Everybody else was eating, and I was just there slightly quietly quaking and not having a drink or anything like that. And
How does it feel?
um, I was very honored. I mean, I actually 16 years ago won the Lifetime Achievement Award. So I thought maybe this is a special award for seniors or something. Uh, but no, I mean, it's a huge honor. And the competition, because in a way it is a competition, was wonderful. And I know some of the people. Um, and no, it's a real honor and it's a real addition. And also to be there in the Albert Hall. Wow,
Mm.
whoever imagined?
I wasn't
Yeah.
there.
Uh,
It seemed a beautiful evening.
It
Very
was, I
well
was there
designed.
and it was great. You know, on the way in, I saw Tom Ford, who I've known. I mean, I knew his late husband, Richard Buckley, very well because he was the London correspondent for Women's Wear Daily for about 12 years, and so many designers. And when I said, it's lovely to see my fashion family here, I mean, yes, they were all those people, you know, all the, Roxanda, Rihanna, really good client of mine. I didn't make her hat, by the way. You know, it was a Le Croix hat.
Okay, okay. For once, because you made hats for
I
her in the past for
made
sure.
many hats for her. Yes. I first met her actually backstage at your show when she was really first starting out. She did a shoot for American Vogue, and she'd said to Anna Wintour, "I need to learn more about fashion." And Anna said, "You need to go to a Dior haute couture show." So she did, and I met her backstage, and she was walking towards me, and I realized she had one of my hats
Oh,
on. And
nice.
I went up to her and I said, "Oh my God, you're Rihanna." And I said, and she said, "Stephen Jones." My name, I could have,
She said, "Oh my
died and
God,
gone
you're
to,
Stephen Jones."
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I could have died and gone to heaven at that point. But we stayed good friends, you know, stylists come and go, hairdressers come and go, blah, 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 all of that. And I'm Uncle Stephen when I come in the room.
Oh, so nice. So you taught her a lot about fashion history as well, because she wanted to learn about fashion.
Yeah, I think she really knows about fashion history,
No.
but she knows what suits her and where her fashion is going.
Hmm.
And I think the really clever thing about the way she dresses as well, it's outrageous, but she communicates with her fans through fashion.
Mm.
Um, and I mean, having said that, she did wear the giant yellow pizza coat thing to the Met. So I'm not sure if she communicated to her fans the intention she wanted to at that point, but she got on the cover of every newspaper around the world and every website.
For sure. And how do you communicate with designers? For example, with when you work with Maria Grazia at Dior, she gives you a brief. How long before the show does she give you a brief, for
Well,
example?
it works very differently with every designers,
Hmm.
and in fact, differently every season. Um, yes, I do have a brief. Hats tend to come after everything else, but she really does believe in hats. I mean, at the very beginning, when I first started to work with her, she said to me, "I want to make a hat that every young girl in the world, every young fashionable girl in the world can wear." So she doesn't see him as a separate accessory. She sees
Mm.
it as a continuation of the line, which, funnily enough, was very much how Monsieur Dior saw it, a continuation of the line. It's not how Saint Laurent or Marbon or Monsieur Ferret or John saw it, but Maria Grazia does see it like that,
Mm.
interestingly enough. But the brief is, I mean, she will have a story or often research. You will have seen in the Scottish film, which was released a few days ago,
Oh yes, on
on the Dior
YouTube.
channel on YouTube, how deeply she researches everything. And I will do a parallel research.
Mm.
Um, and will show her what I found. And when you're working with a designer, it's very much what you build together. The designer wouldn't have thought of something in particular, nor would I, but it's actually what you construct together. And that's the interesting point.
Mm. So that's communicating through fashion.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we communicate, and the end result of it is fashion or hats, actually.
Mm. And sometimes you can get one word from a designer. It can get my inspiration is the wind.
Oh, yes,
and
yes.
and then you're being creative as
Or
usual.
once from Mary Gruber, she sent me a message saying there is no brief.
Oh wow. So what did you do?
Um, this when I made that's when I made hats out of cotton pads for makeup remover.
Really?
Yeah, and she sort of liked
She
them. I mean,
liked
she
it?
looked a bit surprised when I took them out of the box, and of course, my heart was in my mouth because you never know if you've got it right or you've got it wrong. But with Ray, actually, what she will want is for you to get it wrong, not get it right. The last thing she wants is something that she expects or goes with her clothes. She wants the spice and the mixture.
Mm. So she wants to be surprised for sure. Mm. And you collaborated a lot with directors on films as well, costume designers.
Yeah, yeah.
How does it differ from working with a designer on a fashion show?
It's very different because when you are, if I'm working with Maria Grazia or Daniel Roseberry from Schiaparelli or
Mhm.
Tom Brown, what they say and what they think, it is very much their conception. With a film, it's very different because you have the director, you have the costume designer, you have the lighting person, you have the cameraman. How is it going to appear? And of course, you have the actor or actress. And everybody has got a point of view on it. I think directors like the hat because it carries a story. Often the more technical people don't like that because it makes hell with the continuity. If you have a bright light here and there's a shadow in the next scene, the
Oh,
shadow is
yeah.
moving up or down, literally by a millimeter. So that's quite difficult. But the most important thing is really the actor. Um, in it. I remember when I was working with Audrey Tautou on that film Coco Avant Chanel,
Mm.
and I was always because Chanel was a milliner before she was dress designer, and so I was a consultant on the film. I remember the first day of filming, I bought the hat, which was a very simple canotier boater, and I put the hat on Audrey's head, and she just lit up and she said, "Thank heavens I can act less."
Mm. So it
Said,
really helps.
remember, she said, remember, we have this thing which is my pupil is 3 meters across. She said, a tiny little movement is a huge drama
Mm.
on screen.
Mm.
And she said, I can be more subtle because the hat can do the work for me.
Wow.
Anyway, that was
So
just
it's
one point
really
of view.
the actor's studio. It really
Yeah,
helps them
yeah,
to
yeah.
act.
And working with, Keira Knightley, for example, and with her, I mean, just putting a hat on changes the body language. Catherine Zeta-Jones, it changes the body
Oh,
language.
right.
Yeah.
So you stand straight, more straight when you wear a hat. You have a better posture. Maybe that's what I need to stand
No,
straight.
no, not necessarily. I think when you put a hat on, you somewhat act out the hat.
Mm.
Because if it's flowing, maybe you feel flowing. If it's geometric, maybe you feel geometric. If it's jagged, maybe you feel jagged. Or maybe you
Mm.
don't feel jagged and want to feel jagged. It can be the jagged for you. It works in many different pseudo psychological ways.
So it's a tool.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Mm. And what's the difference between women's hats and men's hats?
In, but in general, a lot because the repertoire of men's hats tends to be smaller, tends to be narrower if we're talking about now, what somebody's wearing in the street. I mean, for Dior Man, we make different hats for the show, but as well, what we really sell is baseball caps because every guy around the world owns a baseball cap. But that's the funny thing. They're not going to wear a fedora because that's not the right hat for now, especially
Mm.
with men, it's very important that they feel comfortable in it, and that maybe it doesn't look new, that it looks as though they own it,
Right.
and they need to wear it like they own it as well. Whereas for women, it can be a little bit more about performance.
And fedora for men, so it's completely out now.
Oh, I mean, somewhere like Le Dandy will wear a fedora, and sometimes I do. I have many fedoras, but I haven't worn any this winter. It just doesn't seem so right for now. It seems a little bit forced or something.
Mm.
maybe in a week's time I'll change my mind. Hmm.
Someone is asking, why are men's hats so boring? Well, not Stephen's hat. Stephen.
No, I mean, I think, you know, often the fact that a guy is actually wearing a hat at all is a major statement.
Mhm.
But if you look around the world and see what men are wearing, not only from a Western European point of view, which is always a huge mistake that we tend to judge fashion within Western European standards, which is, one tiny part of the world. Um, what do men wear? They wear beanies, knitted beanies. They wear baseball caps. Sometimes they wear a hat with a small brim in cotton, like a bucket hat or something. But yeah, it's quite narrow. Maybe in the future it will expand. I'm sure it
Mhm.
will do, because of course, 200 years ago, men were the peacocks and women were not. Well,
Right.
women were, but in a very different way.
Mhm. And you say also in the exhibition something very interesting, which is it used to be that France was associated with hats. Well, hats were associated with France, and now we tend to associate hats with England.
Yeah. And I think that's probably been associated with England since my lifetime. Hats were always associated with France. I mean, even in America, if you were a hat shop, and had an E in your name, you put an accent on it to show you were French, and therefore you had the authority, and probably could charge more for your hats because you wear the authority. And I play with that idea. And certainly when I look back at millinery, so many of the great hat makers in the 20th century were French. Madame Paulette being the greatest one, she was the one who invented turbans as an emblem of the resistance during the war.
Mhm.
And British hats were always seen as something a little bit plainer, more tailored, maybe more countryside. Whereas if you wanted a hat which was chic and elegant and had allure, you would go to a French hat.
Mm. And they were Italian hats as well.
Yeah,
What's the
but Italian
difference?
hats are very different as well. I mean, Italian hats are always made out of beautiful materials. You
Mhm.
know,
But
the
Allure was French.
yeah, 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 yeah. I mean, for me, it was this idea of French hats, and I think also um, around the world, whether you're in clothing or accessories or hats or shoes or handbags, everybody has got that aura that France is the center of je ne sais quoi, is the center of the fashion business. I mean, I'm one of many foreigners who show in France. I mean, if you think of all the British ones, I mean, years ago there were people like Catherine Hamnett, but of course there's Stella McCartney, John Galliano. I mean, Maria Grazi's Italian, Karl Lagerfeld was German. There's almost more foreigners than are French people working in the Paris fashion business.
Mhm. So when we say French, it's mostly shown in
Yeah,
Paris.
yeah,
When we say,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And for example, in the exhibition, we have collections from designers like Walter van Beirendonck or Raf Simons, both who are Belgian. We have I have hats from Tom Brown, but it's because they've been shown in Paris,
Mm,
because they all want that association with Paris.
yes. And I saw Walter coming up, tuning in tonight. So if he's still here, hi. And it's true, the creations are very exuberant and amazing.
Yeah,
The
yeah,
ones
yeah,
on at the
yeah.
museum.
hmm No, the journey with Walter is always extraordinary, and what we make is fantastic together, and unlike anybody else's, as Walter
Mhm,
is unlike anybody else.
mhm. And you describe your style as surrealist. You love surrealism for hats in general.
I mean, I think I can never really describe my
No.
style, and I think the day that I can describe it is maybe the day that I finish. Um, but certainly there are elements of surrealism in it. But I think any hat is surreal. I mean, just the fact of putting something on your head is quite a surreal process. You could put a
Mm.
paper bag on your head or a plastic bag to keep the rain off. But if
Mm.
I take my glass and put,
That's
here we
a
have a surreal hat.
hat.
Yeah, yeah, et voilà.
And you say a crown is a hat.
Yeah, I mean, a crown is a hat too. Yeah. And
Mhm.
if you have to have the symbol of royalty, the symbol of power around the world is what you put on your head. It's not what you put on your feet, for example.
That's true. I hadn't thought of that.
Yeah. I
Someone
mean, it's,
says, I
yeah.
love your no limit style. Maybe that's a way to describe your style, no limit.
Well, I think what I always wanted to have was the freedom. And I think freedom is very important for me. I mean, I live in London, but I work in Paris. The ability to flip between different things, that freedom within design, the freedom to work with an American designer or a French designer or an Italian designer, it's very enriching. It's a life enriching experience. And I think the diversity of what I do is also representing my freedom. I would hate to think that I could only design a back dress. That's part of the reason I'm a milliner, because you have huge freedoms.
Mm. You said Coco Chanel started as a milliner
Yeah.
and then became a fashion
Hmm.
designer. And you
Hmm.
went the other way around because you started with ready to wear and you went to
Yes.
millinery.
Yeah. So many designers started as milliners. Holston, Monsieur Dior, the first thing that he did was sketches, and he sold sketches to the famous milliners in the 1940s, 1930s and 1940s, Claude Saint-Cyr in particular. And there's a new book of all the sketches that he did for her. And I did an exhibition at the Musée Christian Dior in Granville a few years ago. And we actually created some of the hats from Monsieur Dior sketches, which had never been realized. So,
Mm,
yeah.
amazing. And you also created a collection inspired by designers you've never met,
Oh, yeah.
Elsa Schiaparelli. Um,
Yeah, Elsa Schiaparelli. So I did this collection. I mean, my collections tend to be thematic. So I imagined if I was living during the 50s, and what would I make for Elsa Schiaparelli? What would I make for uh, Madame Grey? What would I make for Hubert de Givenchy? Not the houses, but the actual person. And
mm,
the extraordinary thing about the Palais Galliera is they had all the real hats from those particular designers, and they're in cabinets. So it's got my version of a Chanel hat, which has got a camellia in the top of the crown, and then a real Chanel hat from 1935 or something, which is this exquisite straw with paradise feathers on, and Jacques Fat, and all the great designers in Paris. So that
yes,
was a wonderful exercise too.
they have a lot of hats in their archives, indeed. I was surprised to see next
Over
to your.
4,000, over
Wow.
4,000 hats. And most of them never been seen. Because, of course, when a museum curator goes in, what they want to have is the star dresses from Balenciaga or Dior or whatever, and that exquisite beige cashmere hat from 1925, which is quite discreet but beautiful, is never seen.
Mm,
And I mean that, but they have some real star pieces in their collections too.
mm. And I see Francis Kurkdjian is here. Thank you for tuning in, Francis. Francis is a um, perfumer of Dior. So, do you collaborate sometimes? Are there bridges between the hats and the fragrances?
Well, yes, we do collaborate because I'm wearing his fragrance at the moment. Funnily.
Ooh, that's a collaboration. That's the best
Yeah,
collaboration.
the best collaboration, absolutely. Um, Yeah, I mean, he's just new at Deal, so hopefully one day we will actually do something together. But in fact, I did do that. This is the way that we met. I did do a series of hats inspired by fragrances that I'd worn. So one of one of the fragrances was Absolu pour le Matin by
Mhm.
Francis, and I created a hat which was made from straw, which was all sort of blown away by the wind, and that was the tribute to that perfume.
Wow, that's the best brief to have a fragrance.
Well, I think there's something which is very similar about fragrance and hats because is, in a way, it's this, the tangent. It's what you imagine that you're bringing. It's how you're changing your personality
Mm,
into a
mm.
particular way. I mean, people say, "Oh, that will suit my personality, either in fragrance or in hats." But actually, it's the person they want to be. It's not the person who they are.
Yes.
It's that dream. That's why people will aspire to something else. So maybe you're not feeling like Antidi by Givenchy, but if you put that fragrance on, you will be that person. Or
It's
yeah,
interesting what you're saying also because you spoke about actors and the way they use hats to get into a character. And I spoke with Frédéric Malle, and he said some actors use a fragrance to get into the character. So
yeah,
that's
sure.
another. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, fragrance is so emotive that
Mm.
that's a wonderful way of doing it. Um, in fact, I did play in a film which was WE, directed by Madonna, and I was the
Ooh.
Roy Milliner. And in that film, I actually wore by Norman Hartnell a fragrance called In Love, which was a fragrance from the late 50s, because I
Hmm.
knew that around that time that fragrance was created. So I found a bottle.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah.
we can find this clip of with Madonna, this film.
Uh, yes, yeah, it was in the film called WE with Angela Riseborough in it. So, yeah, you can see it. I was actually quite a bit fatter there, and I'm wearing this most fabulous grey wig, which
I
is
look
grey all on the
for
front,
you.
but bald on top.
And I really like in the exhibition the video of the Jean-Paul Gaultier show when he brings you to the catwalk
Yeah,
and yeah, you're,
that was my second season with Jean Paul, and backstage I always have a big tray to carry my hats from one place to another. And suddenly, backstage, towards the end of the show, he handed me the tray and pushed me out onto the runway. And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Go out there." And unbeknown to me, he told all the girls who were on the runway wearing my hats to take their hats off and put them in my tray. And that's how he introduced me to the Paris fashion world,
wow.
which
So,
is
and from
amazing.
them on, you were no longer behind the scenes. You were, well,
I
in
still,
London, you
I,
were
I
not
still
behind the
feel as though
scenes.
I'm behind the scenes in a funny way, but
Really?
yeah, I've got one foot out on the runway and one foot behind.
Yes, you take your bow sometimes with a designer, with Kim Jones. A
Yeah,
number of
yeah,
times you, yeah.
yeah. When it was a few years ago, and Kim grabbed me similarly and took me out on the runway to celebrate my 25 years of being at Dior, quarter of a century. So
Wow. I can't imagine
I'm
for
that
the
I'm
30th anniversary.
yeah,
Can't
coming
wait.
up soon.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the longest serving creative director at Dior. Victoire
Wow.
de Castellane came in just a few years after me.
Well, that's very impressive. And a word that you said earlier is freedom. You've managed to keep your freedom in creativity, in your you've kept your company all along, right? While
Yeah, yeah,
having such a tight collaboration with Dior.
yeah, yeah.
Y-
Yes. Yes, I have. I mean, it hasn't always been easy and isn't always easy, but yeah, I've always wanted to keep that independence.
Mm.
Yeah, really important to me.
Twice a year you present your collection. And we see in the exhibition the show invites. Even the show invites are very creative.
Mhm. Well, every season we send out a little postcard. It's normally a postcard size, because I always love postcards, even though nowadays, of course, very few people send
Mhm.
postcards. And it's amazing to see how many collections I've done. I mean, I opened in 1980, two collections
Mm.
a year since 1980. It's a long time,
Wow. You
44
never
years.
skipped one? Never?
Sometimes they didn't have an official name, but just to make it look pretty, I gave them a name afterwards.
to have consistency.
To make it consistent. No, I mean only that happened just one season. Yeah, but I was still making hats every season. I was still making collection, absolutely,
Mm,
and I probably always will. You know, a hat can
mm.
be anything. It can be a flower tucked behind your ear, or it can be a glass like I just did.
And you did the flower, you did the Rose Royce. I love the name. The
Hmm.
name also
Those,
is part of the creation.
yes, when I was stagiaire, apprenti, I was working for a very traditional couture house, and they had these wonderful programs with all the names of the outfits on, because they've been going since actually the 20s. And in the
Mhm.
same way that Christian Dior or Balenciaga or Yves Saint Laurent would name, actually, Yves Saint Laurent didn't, but they would name the outfits. I thought it'd be funny to name the hats. And for my first collection, I asked my friend Glinda von Regensburg to come and name the hats, and she did.
Wow. So
Yeah.
you have names for every hat.
Names for every hat. Well, if they were just a number, I would never remember them. I mean,
Yeah.
I've done so many hats, I don't exactly remember the name of every hat either. But
But it
yeah, if
helps.
somebody says Rolls Royce, I will know it automatically. If somebody said
It's
hat
here.
num
That's Rose
number,
Royce.
oh yeah, 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 there it is.
Yeah. Okay. It's like children.
Yeah,
Easier when you have
yes,
names, I guess.
yes, as opposed to a number. Yeah,
And it's very poetic. The names are very poetic as well.
yeah,
And always tongue in cheek.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's an important part. You know, when somebody is buying one of my hats, they're buying, they can buy, just buy it, they can buy it for many reasons. They can just buy it because they want a lovely hat or it's flattering on them. But the reason really they're buying an haute mode hat, like an
Hmm.
haute couture hat, is because of the process and the thought and everything that goes into it. So they, often my best clients, will want to know the story of why it's named that, how it was created, where it was created. Can they see the very original sketch of it before it was a final sketch? So it's a whole sort of package. And they, I mean, as people with haute couture clothes, see them very much as collectors as opposed to just wearers.
Right. They see
Yeah.
themselves
Yeah.
as collectors.
And it
Yeah.
was very interesting at the moment at Sotheby's, I think, there was the collection of Muna Al Ayoub,
Yes.
who was a great couture buyer during the 60s. And in fact, the Jean Paul Gaultier dress in denim degradé with feathers was like, I can't remember how much it sold for now, but it was extraordinary. And she said, well, you know, I never wore it. But she
Wow.
considered herself as a collector, not really, she wasn't really buying them to wear. She was buying them to experience the process, um, be part of that creative journey.
Mhm. We have many questions. We had a question earlier from Fred with my brother-in-law, so I'd rather
An
ask him.
inside job.
Yeah. So Fred is asking if it's a status symbol. Are men hats a status symbol, especially
Well,
for
the,
men?
yeah, I mean, in fact, I mentioned Colin McDowell before, who wrote the biography of John Galliano, and the title of his art book was At Status, Style, Glamour.
Mhm.
So, yes, if you do have a Laura Piano cashmere baseball cap, obviously that will have more kudos than something that you bought on the Rue de Rivoli for €10. Um,
Mm.
so, yes, there is but there's a subtle status within it. I mean, of course, a more visible status would have been in the 17th century if you had an ostrich feather, for example, because ostrich feathers only came from South Africa. Can you imagine actually getting
How
something from
exp
South Africa
how
at
long it
those
took?
times? How long it took? How complicated it was? So an ostrich feather was extremely expensive. Um, and hats being status. I mean, yes, the crown, the papal mitre, policeman's hat. The
Mm.
hats are completely about status, men's hats.
Mhm. And women? Yes, as you said, if it's ostrich feathers or.
Well, even now, if it's got a little H on the side of it, and it's come from Hermes and it's a beautiful straw, or if it's a felt and it's Maison Michel, or if it's got a CD on it and it's Christian Dior. I mean, it doesn't have to have. I will know where they're from without having the label put on the
Oh,
outside, but most
I'm
people would
sure.
not. Yeah, and also there is nothing more visible. It's more
Mm,
visible than a handbag. So, yeah, I mean, the hat and who you're associating with says a lot about you.
mm. So in the era of social media, we can expect to see more hats because, as you say, it's very
Well,
visible.
what we see is this,
Yeah.
you know, yeah.
I should start wearing hats for Sunday Night Live every single week.
Well, I wasn't going to say that, but
But yeah,
yes,
for sure.
obviously. I'm surprised
The
we
bare
got halfway into
minimum.
the conversation until you realized that. Also, anyway, sorry, that was a bit cheeky of me.
Actually, someone says, I love hat and want to learn to make my own. Where do I start? Where do you think is best to start? Well, to go to Stephen Jones' shop in London.
Well, yeah, it depends where they're writing from. There are various hack courses around the world.
Mhm,
There's one at FIT in New York, for example. There's some here in England. There's some in France as well, at Chazelles-sur-Lyon, at the Hat Museum, big French hat museum.
mhm,
But often, many of the milliners that I know have actually learnt on the job and become apprenti or the stagiaire in various workrooms. So you're actually learning on the job. And people come to hat making through lots of different ways. I have working with me now somebody who's a sculptor originally, somebody who worked for a big chemical company. I had somebody who was a secretary in the City of London. People come to hat making for lots of different strange reasons, but so often because they want to be creative and they want to use their
mm,
hands and they want to make that
mm.
magical thing that you put on your head.
So it's really nice. You have very diverse background
Yeah,
in
yeah. And
millinery.
actually, despite Brexit, when we came over for our tour at the Palais Galliera, I photographed everybody together, and there was 15 of us or something. And we have Norwegian, Swedish, German, Austrian, Swiss, Italian, Spanish, you know, people from all over Europe.
Mm.
I mean, obviously, who've been here a while
In your
have
team.
residency. Yeah, yeah, but it's wonderful to have that mix of different people. Everybody gives brings a different flavor to the
Mm.
mix of what they make. It's like, making a hat is like being a ballet dancer. It's so much about the personal interpretation. You could give one part to one dancer and it would look in one way, and the same part to another dancer would look completely different.
Oh,
Well, hats are like that too.
wow. Your
Yeah.
sketch, if you give it to different designers of your team, the result is very different.
Yeah, yeah, different. And I work with, it's not, I'm not sewing on every sequin myself. In a way,
Yeah.
I wish I could do that. Um, but funnily enough, occasionally, if I do do something in the workroom, the head of my workroom will say to me, undo it and do it again.
Get
So,
out of
well,
here.
I wouldn't accept it from anybody else. Why should I accept it from you? But that's sort of the truth as well. But you, there's really a lot to learn when you're a milliner. You never stop learning. You never learn how. But I will, the person who's actually making the hat, I will try and work with them as much as possible,
Mhm.
because if it's not working out, if there's something not going right, is it they who are wrong, or is it the design which is wrong? Or maybe I
Yeah.
have to reconsider it. It's you
So
can
it's
be
back and forth.
I can be autocratic about it, but in a way, what's the point? You sort
Mm.
of have to go with the flow. That's why, even though I do sketch, absolutely, and there's a firm concept, you have to allow the hat develop in the way that it wants to go. There is no point trying to fight against it because it knows something that you don't.
Oh, wow.
It's a bit like
And
having a child, I
yeah,
guess.
And,
Yeah.
and is
I
it
just want
true?
my children to be happy. Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
are there heads that are made for hats and heads that aren't made for hats? And in that case, the person should just give up and not not insist
No, well, I will not give up in finding a hat that suits them.
ever.
The thing is that nowadays, if you look around shops, there's actually a very limited amount styles of hats which are available. And we're
Mhm.
talking about men's hats. You go into a hat shop, what is there? Only beanies or baseball caps, really, and that's it. But what people need to do is experiment and try different things on. If you look at a photograph from pre-war photograph from say the 1930s, every single person has got a hat on. Now, of course, it was a social norm, and there's very specific reasons why they were wearing a hat, but they found a hat that suited them.
Mm.
So, so the idea today, oh well, I've got a tête au chapeau or not a tête au chapeau. Uh,
Is wrong.
so, yeah, I don't agree with it. But often people don't have the confidence to wear a hat. People freak out about when they buy a new pair of jeans, let alone, which are so ubiquitous everywhere. It's just how it makes you feel, let alone wearing a hat, which is so visible.
Mm.
But I remember once talking to Isabella Blow, who I'd made a few hats for, not very many. Philip Tracy made most of her hats and, was very famously associated with them. And she said to me, well, hats give me the confidence and I can just relax underneath and the hat can do the talking for me,
Mhm.
which is great.
Yeah, it's
And even
great.
Anna Piaggi, who is sort of my muse, she would say, without a hat, I feel as though my thoughts will escape. And a hat helps to sort of help me focus on what I have to do. So
Oh,
it can
I love
have
that.
slightly metaphysical properties as well. Whether you believe in that or no,
Mm.
it doesn't matter. But she did, and that's what is important.
Yes. So if you can't focus, wear a hat. So you keep your
Exactly,
thoughts.
exactly. And funnily enough, you will become the focus for other people as well. Because if
Yes.
you're wearing a hat, you will always get served first. You'll always go to the front of the queue. Um,
Mm. Yeah. And as you said, it's also a good icebreaker. Not
oh yeah,
only, but
yeah.
yeah.
I know it's a great icebreaker.
Yeah.
Like that's an interesting hat. This
And you said
wonderful
Anna
backhanded
Piaggi.
compliment.
Who is your muse at the moment? You said Anna Piaggi was your muse.
Was when she. I don't really have one particular one
Mhm.
because I'm very good at changing my hats to suit that particular person. And if I had a muse, all the hats would suit them and nobody else. And
Mhm.
so when I'm creating a collection, I try and think of other people, of different people. I mean, of course, it's very much like that would suit Deborah Quinn, or would suit Julie Lagenberg, or that would suit Amy Fine Collins. Great clients of mine around, or Virginia Bates, great clients of mine around the world. But I try not to do that because it's a bit dangerous, and I can go down a path that is too specifically them.
Mm, I see. We have another question. What do you see as the future of millinery in light of the current tech advancements? Do you use
Okay.
3D printing and all this?
Sometimes, yes. Sometimes I do use technology and 3D printing and all those things. The interesting thing about fabrics, though, if you want a perfect white, use white
Mhm.
cotton. It's the simplest thing in the world, but there's nothing more beautiful. If you want the best black, use black velvet, which is like the oldest fabric. Of course, if you want to have a clever effect, you could use like hologram or something which was illuminated. That's not really technology. Where I do use technology, and I always have done, is for communication. I've always worked around the world. So I remember in the mid 80s, long before email, I was the only person I knew who had a fax machine, apart from Harrods. because I worked with Japan. I had an atelier in Japan, and we used to send sketches. And in fact, my very early communications with Rei Kawakubo were all by faxes. And but now, I'm nowadays I'm on the go. I'm on the Eurostar. I'm traveling around to see clients, and I'm sketching. Sometimes on the back of an envelope or in my notebook that I take everywhere with me. I'm just trying to see if I can find. No, it's actually downstairs.
Right.
Um, and I'm photographing my sketches and then sending them back to London and seeing what people think. And then we're FaceTiming about them. Sometimes I'm doing fittings by Zoom. And yeah, so I use technology all the time. But actually, in the creation of hats and in the creation of design, sometimes technology is, for me, is limiting
Oh, really?
because a pencil on a piece of paper is uniquely expressive in a way that a mouse or a computer or a stylus cannot be, or not in
Because
my experience. Just it's a different medium.
mm,
Um, And say, for example, if you look at Daniel Roseberry's work, I believe the reason it has the extravagance and the flair that it has is because he sketches everything himself.
no,
But different designers work in different ways. I mean, Jean Paul never sketched. He would always say, I'd like to have that jacket with this sleeve and a little idea. He'd have a sketch artist. You know, it works in different ways with every designer, but it
right.
does bring a specific character.
But it's true, many designers still sketch with a pencil and not
Not so
on
many,
no?
not so many designers now. No, the amount of designs that they must create all the time, the huge turnover of work that they have to create. Often they don't have time to sketch themselves.
Mm,
Mhm.
mm, yeah,
But even at the time of Monsieur Dior, when you see all these so many drawings, I mean, in the 40s, Dior was drawing himself. But if you see past, I'd need to check with Swazik Faf or Perrine, who Dior Heritage, when it went from Monsieur Dior's own sketches to sketch artists, because they had sketch artists in the studio to, he'd be there arranging a drapery or talking about them, and they would draw it because it was quicker.
I see.
Because one other thing about fashion, you're always working against the clock,
Yeah. And it
always.
makes me think of what you said in the beginning about Claude Montana, who said a designer cannot do more than two collections a year.
Yeah, in pret-a-porter.
Yeah,
Yeah, or do two collections in parallel.
in
Yeah,
parallel. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that
More
was
than one collection in parallel. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah.
wow.
Mm.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Stephen. It was fascinating. Thank you very much for coming to Sunday Night Live.
My pleasure, and it's been great to talk to you. And yeah, if you're going to the Palais Galliera, it's very, very busy at the weekend,
Yes,
I have to say.
that's what I found out today.
Mhm.
Very busy.
It's calmer during the week. If you have the opportunity to go midweek, that's the best time to go.
And it's until March,
Yeah,
mid-March?
yeah. It's opened, I think, till the 16th of March, but I'd need to check that with them. So yeah,
Yes. So
yeah,
don't miss it. If you haven't visited it yet, you should. That's a
yeah,
fantastic show. And
yeah.
also, I
And
can't. Mhm.
the Palais Galliera did a fantastic job, and the curator Marie-Laure Gouton was had an extraordinary view on my work.
Yes, yes. I have to say I was blown away.
Thank you.
And I can't wait for the Dior show, the men's and couture.
Yeah, yeah. I can't wait for them either. I've got lots of sketching to do this evening.
Okay, so Sunday night. Yeah,
Yeah,
usually that's one of my questions. What is your Sunday routine or Sunday night routine? Well, it seems you work on Sunday nights.
yeah. Well, normally Sunday morning is time on my sofa sketching. So I was actually on the Eurostar this morning, so I've got to do it Sunday evening.
Okay, let's do some catch up now.
Absolutely.
So thank you again, and thanks everyone for tuning in. And see you next week. My guest next week is Jean-Charles de Castelbajac. So
But
the last guest of the year.
I have to tell you a very funny story about him. One of the first times I came professionally is in, I think it was 1977. I had a phone, or 78, I don't really know what it was. I had a phone call, and somebody needed to bring a suit from Savile Row over to a French designer, and they would pay for the trip. And I had no money. So that was how I got a free trip to Paris. And I went up and picked his suit from Savile Row and took it over to him.
Oh, wow. So you go way
Yeah,
back.
way back.
And I don't know if you saw that Jean-Charles designed not, how do you call it?
The chasuble. Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
for the Notre Dame.
yeah.
So it,
Amazing. What a
yeah,
huge honor.
yeah.
Incredible. Yeah.
Did you watch the the reopening of Notre Dame over
Yes,
the
I
weekend?
watched it a little bit. Yeah, yeah. I wasn't there, but yeah.
Was looking for hats, but I didn't see many hats in the
No,
audience.
no,
No,
no. I thought there would be, but
disappointing. Yeah.
no.
Oh well.
Okay.
So if you can tune in next Sunday,
Maybe you
feel
could say that the
free.
Notre Dame itself is a huge hat. You
Yes,
don't need to be more decorative than it is. And in
exactly.
fact, in the Palais Galliera exhibition, there is one Tom Brown outfit which has got a hat which is a gargoyle, which is the gargoyle of Notre Dame.
Really, I missed that one.
Yeah,
How
it's
come I
the
miss it?
third to last huge grey outfit.
Okay, I should go back. I will go back.
Okay,
Thank you. Au
thank you.
revoir.
Bye
À
bye now.
très
Au revoir.
bientôt.
À très bientôt.
Bye.
Merci. Bye.